Despite huge debts and very high debt servicing costs, Sri Lankan Airlines may have recorded its best operating profit in well over 15 years, Richard Nuttall, CEO of Sri Lankan Airlines, tells India Outbound. Nuttall adds that India is his largest market and he is looking to boost the number of Indian passengers by offering not just new spots and sites in Sri Lanka, but also enhanced connectivity from smaller cities of India.
The challenge for Sri Lankan over the last couple of years is that because of the country's situation, we've not been able to borrow in the country and we can't borrow outside of the country, which means that we've had to live on our cash flows. So that's quite challenging coming out of COVID when you owe people a lot of money. But at the same time, the markets and the yields have been very strong as people have come back from COVID. And so if you go back to the beginning of last year, we were actually profitable from the December to the March and things were pretty good. We then obviously had the problems in the country, which were very well documented and I would suggest over-documented, particularly in India. And so the first quarter of our financial year, which runs April to March, or the second quarter of 2022 was difficult and we lost money. Then the second quarter, when we should have really made a lot of money because it was the middle of summer, there was no fuel in the country. That quarter we actually did make a little bit, but we should have made a lot. And then since then we've been steadily making money. And so the financial year that ended at the end of March this year, we're still going through the final numbers, but we will essentially break even. We might make a little bit if we're lucky. So it will be the best year the airline has had financially for maybe 15 years. The outlook for next year is very positive, so we're hoping to make, 40-50 million US dollars profit next year because the world hasn't changed so much compared with the year that's just gone past. But, we're hoping we won't have travel advisories, we've got fuel in the country. So some of the things that caused us to lose opportunity last year hopefully will not repeat themselves. So if everything remains stable, then, we're in quite a good situation in terms of profitability. India is really, really important to us. We fly to 10 destinations in India. We were the first airline to 100 weekly flights, or first international airline to 100 weekly flights in India. And we serve many, many secondary cities. And Indians like flying on Sri Lankan because I think Sri Lankans understand Indian passengers perhaps better than some other airlines do. But there's culturally we're quite close. So India's been very, very important to us, but proportionally there's less Sri Lankan diaspora in India. And when the country went through the difficulties, it was the diaspora that kept us flying. And in terms of tourism, you Googled Sri Lanka in the news in April, May last year. Your media in your country made it look as though Sri Lanka was burning. Well, I can tell you there's a few European countries that are burning much more now than Sri Lanka was ever burning. But, that's not the perception. So we've been trying to get that back, and that's why we had the roadshow to Delhi earlier in the year. It's why we brought a lot of bloggers, a lot of tourists. The tourism ministry has been doing a lot of work. So we've been trying to get Indians back to Sri Lanka so that they can then go back and tell their friends that, hey, everything is fine, there's plenty of food, there's no fuel queues, the hotels are half full, you'll get great rates. And it's a wonderful country to visit. And we're now beginning to see the fruits of that. So the April figures for tourism to Sri Lanka, finally India is back to where it belongs at number one. $14,000 passengers from a country of 1.4 billion is not enough. And it should be much, much more going forward. So we're looking forward and we hope to get much, much more Indian traffic to Sri Lanka. And then I think the other bit for India is that, if you look, because of where we're positioned, we fly to 10 cities in India. There's no reason why in the future, as we get the fleet numbers up, that can't be 12, 13, 14. And I think that there are many cities, particularly going east, where we can be a service provider, particularly from, shall we say, secondary cities in India that are not as easily served from the big hubs in Delhi and Mumbai. So historically, we've carried a lot of traffic from India to the Gulf and going west. And we'll still do some of that, but it'll be more filler traffic. I think, longer term, we see our focus being a little bit more eastwards. I think one of the things that we want to do for Sri Lanka is that a lot of people are still selling the traditional Sri Lanka. So you do the same tour, you go to the same places. And Sri Lanka has a lot more destinations, and we want to be much more focused on special interest and different market segments. So, we want to look at, whether you want to come for cricket, whether you want to come for wildlife, whether you want to come for the Ramayana Trail, whether you want to come for rainforest, whatever it may be. So we want to get much better at showcasing the different special interests that can come for Sri Lanka. And then I think another segment that we're working on very hard in India is MICE. So if you want to come and do a big event, whether it's a corporate event, whether it's a wedding, whatever it may be, because we fly to so many cities in India, you can actually often get a much better deal in Sri Lanka than you can get in India itself.